Hi everybody, this is the review video of the first graders Geography of USA. Here, the Louisiana Purchase had given the USA the heartland, but the Transcontinental Treaty of 1819 gave them something almost as valuable. So American government, they bought Louisiana territory from French government and made its territory size twice as bigger than it used to be. So now Louisiana Purchase gave USA the heartland. Heartland refers to the important area, right? Important territory. And not only the Louisiana Purchase, but also Transcontinental Treaty 1819 between Spain and American government give American government something almost as valuable as Louisiana Purchase. So the Spanish accepted that USA would have jurisdiction in the far west above 42nd parallel, what is now border of California and Oregon. So here, throughout this transcontinental treaty, Spanish government accepted USA would have a control over 42nd parallel. Here, we have Oregon and California. The border between these two states is a 42nd parallel. And Spanish government and American government come to an agreement that American government will have a jurisdiction. American government will have a control over this Oregon area, whereas Spain would control what lay below western of the American territory. So Spain will only control the behind this side, California side. So that's what Transcontinental Treaty is about. So the USA had reached the Pacific. American government now reached to the Pacific area. And at the time, most Americans thought the great victory of 1819 was getting Florida. But Secretary of State John Quincy Adams wrote in his diary the acquisition of definite line of boundary to the Pacific form a great epoch in our history. So do you remember Spanish government? They gave up this Florida area to U.S. government. So many citizens of America in 1819 they believe that the biggest achievement in 1819 for American government was getting Florida area. But the Secretary of State John Quincy Adams he seemed to have a different opinion about 1819. He thought that the acquisition of a definite line of boundary, so definite line of 42nd parallel above this area, getting a control above this area, will be the great epoch in the history. So epoch here means time or era. Okay, so getting this border control area will be one of the greatest time, one of the greatest era in American history, John Quincy Adams said. So it seems that the American government they drove out foreign countries, they drove out Britain, France, and Spain, and there was another Spanish-speaking problem, Mexico. It was not over yet, so they have to deal with Mexico now. So because the Louisiana Purchase doubled the size of USA when Mexico became independent of Spain, 1821, its border was just 200 miles from the port of New Orleans. So 1821, Mexico declared independence from Spain. So Mexico is around here. The modern Mexico, modern Mexico is around down below this South America. And now they became independent in 1821. So maybe the Mexican border and the New Orleans area here, New Orleans. Here is the New Orleans, right? New Orleans. The distance between Mexico and like New Orleans was like 200 miles, right? From the port of New Orleans. So in the 21st century, Mexico poses no territorial threat to the USA, although its proximity causes America a problem as it feeds its northern neighbor's appetite for illegal labor and drug. So you guys remember what does proximity means? Proximity means close distance. So Mexico is located in quite a close distance with America. So Mexico nowadays, Mexico provide illegal labors and illegal drugs is smuggled into America through Mexico nowadays. So it causes problem in American society about the illegal labor and illegal drug. But in the 21st century nowadays, Mexico poses no territorial threat to the USA. But these illegal labor and drug, it's not really a territorial threat nowadays, America. So Mexico is not really a great threat to America nowadays. However, it was different. In 1821, that was different. Mexico controlled the land all the way up to the northern California, which the USA could live with, but it also stretched out east, including what is now Texas, which then is now borders Louisiana. So at this time, year 1821, Mexico, they controlled northern California. So they controlled land all the way up to the northern California. Here, northern California was influenced by Mexico, and USA could live with that. So it was okay. Mexico controlling northern California was okay for America, USA, but they stretched out to east. So nowadays, we have here is Texas. Now Mexican influence was stretching out to the Texas area and border of Louisiana. So the Texas is border the Louisiana state area. So now it became quite problematic. So Mexico's population at the time was 6.2 million, USA 9.6 million. So not much difference between the gap of this population. US Army may have been able to see off the mighty British, but they had been fighting 3,000 miles from home, the supply lines across an ocean. So we can say that the see off, maybe like remove. So American Army, US Army, when they fought with British Army, they removed the mighty British because they were traveling. Britain were traveling 3,000 miles in the ocean. So they were moving their supply lines, such as like weapons and food and soldiers, traveling 3,000 miles in the ocean, and Britain had a difficult fight against US Army, so US win the war. However, the Mexicans were next door. This case with Mexico is different with case with Britain because Mexico are the neighbors located next doors. So moving on to the next page. So quietly, Washington encouraged Americans and new arrivals to begin to settle on both sides of U.S.-Mexican border. So American government they encouraged its citizens and encouraged its new immigrant to leave and move the border between USA and Mexico. So waves of immigrants came and spread west and southwest. So many people moved to the border between US and Mexican area, and there was little chance of them putting down roots in the region we now know as modern Mexico, thus assimilating and boosting the population numbers there. So actually there was a little chance, there was low possibility of people, right? So there was no possibility of immigrant putting down roots. So there was no little possibility of making a successful settlement for these new people near the border between Mexico and American area. Also, there was a low chance of assimilating. Assimilating means like adapting. Low chance of these people adapting in this new area, and also low chance of boosting the population numbers. So American government knew that there was low chance of putting them down, low chance of adapting, and low chance of boosting the population of people near the border between US and Mexico. However, they keep sending these people to this border area. Mexico is not blessed in the American way. America had, in terms of geography, it has fertile soil, nature protections, and water resources, routes, and really advantageous geography. Mexico is different. It has poor quality agricultural land, no river system to use for transport, was wholly undemocratic. So I guess in this time around 1821, I guess Mexican government was not a democratic government. And also with new arrival having little chance of ever being granted land. So there was little chance of these people, if you live in the Mexico area, there's little chance that the government will give you the land for free, almost for free. So uh, while the infiltration of Texas was going on, Washington issued the Monroe Doctrine, named after President James Monroe, 1823. So here, infiltration refers to invasion. So this Mexican influence was stretching out to the Texas area. Mexican influence was invading to this Texas area. And Washington published a international policy. Washington American government published a international policy called Monroe Doctrine, which named after the President James Monroe, 1823. So these boiled down to warning the European power that they could no longer seek the land in Western Hemisphere. So here, this, do you remember? What does this refers to? This refers to Monroe Doctrine, right? Monroe Doctrine boil down to, it comes down to. Monroe Doctrine is about warning the European power. And the European power cannot seek land in the Western Hemisphere anymore. So the Western Hemisphere refers to USA. So USA is basically saying to European powers such like Britain, France, and Spain, hey, don't come to this territory, don't come to America and seek the land anymore. And that if they lost any part of their existing territory, they could not reclaim them or else. And if Britain, France, and Spain, they used to own the territory in America, and now they lost the part of their existing territory, that's it. They cannot reclaim the ownership of this territory. Don't come to America and claim for the ownership of the territory anymore. So the Monroe Doctrine was about a warning against European powers. By mid-1830, there was enough white settlers in Texas to force the Mexican issue. So 1830, American government thought that there is now enough white settlers, enough American citizens in Texas area, so the American government can raise some issue about the security and safety of American citizens. So the Mexican, Catholic, Spanish-speaking population numbered in the low thousands, but there were about 20,000 white Protestant settlers. So Mexican, Catholic, and Spanish-speaking population refers to like typical Mexican citizens. Okay, so they have low thousand, maybe 1,000 or 2,000 Mexican, Catholic, Spanish-speaking people reside in the Texas area, whereas 20,000 white Protestant. White Protestant refers to new immigrant American citizens. So they have 20,000 citizens try to reside in Texas area. So Texas Revolution of 1835 to 6 drove the Mexicans out. So American government and Mexican government end up having war against each other 1835, and America, they drove Mexicans out of its territory, but it was a close run thing. So American government almost lost the war. Fortunately, they win, but it was not really an easy fight. It was a close run competition. And had the settlers lost, then the Mexican army would have been in the position to march on New Orleans. So, this is a if if the settlers had lost then Mexican army. So the settlers had lost if the settlers had lost the war, then the Mexican army would have been they would have been in a position to march New Orleans. However, in reality, American win. So they win this area, New Orleans area, and control the southern end of the Mississippi. So Mexican would have control the southern end of the Mississippi, but they lost. So USA they have a control over the Mississippi area too. So it is one of the great what ifs of modern history. Since the fight was really close run competition, so historians they would like to ask a question: what if Mexico had win the war, and what if Mexico had have a control over New Orleans area? What if Mexico had a control over the Mississippi area? How the history would differently turn out to be? So that's quite an interesting question that historians want to ask. But in reality, U.S. government win. Okay? So, however, history turned the other way, and Texas became independent via American money, arms, and ideas. So, America wins. So the Texas became independent via American money and arms and ideas. At this time, around 1821, Texas didn't belong to any side. They didn't belong to America, didn't belong to Mexico, was just independent. And Texas was influenced by Mexico more and more. But uh, throughout this Texas Revolution, Mexicans were out of this Texas area. Now Texas became independent from Mexican influence. Okay? So the territory went on to join the Union in 1845, and together they fought 1846 to 8 Mexican War, in which they crushed their southern neighbor, which was required, accepted Mexico and in the sand of southern bank of Rio Grande. So Texas became independent. So the territory, Texas, they joined the Union. They joined the American government, 1845. And America and Texas, they fought together against Mexico in 1846 and 28. So they win and they crush the southern neighbor, which is Mexico. So Mexico had to accept that their border, Mexican border, end in the sand of the southern bank of Rio Grande. So there is a river between Mexico and US border area, which is called the Rio Grande. So Mexico accepted that the southern part of Rio Grande will be the border of the Mexico. So with California, New Mexico, land which is now Arizona, Nevada, Utah, and part of Colorado included, the border of continental USA now looks similar to those of today. So now USA, they have a border between Mexico, and they also acquired like California, New Mexico, Arizona, Nevada, Utah, and Colorado. All these states are located nearby the border area and southern part of the America. Now, with acquiring all this area, continental USA border now look quite similar to nowadays modern border of USA. And they have many natural borders. America, they have many natural borders. For instance, in the south, Rio Grande runs through desert. So here, Rio Grande is here, around here area, okay? Rio Grande. Big river. border between Mexico and USA. This Rio Grande River runs through the desert, and to the north are Great Lakes. So toward the north side, they have a Great Lake area now, and rocky land with a few close to the border. So you guys remember the pre-Cambrian rock, Canadian Shield, the northern side, this rock area toward the north, border between Canada and USA, right? So they have Great Lake and the rocky land with few people close border in the eastern half of the continent. So eastern half of the continent here in the rocky area, border north area, only few people live nearby this area because this environment is harsh here. And the east and west are great oceans. So to the west side, they have Pacific Ocean. To east side, they have Atlantic Ocean. So many natural borders. However, in the 21st century, Southwest cultural historical memory of the region as Hispanic land is likely to resurface. In the 21st century, nowadays, Hispanic land. So Hispanic means Spanish. So here, nowadays, America have many Spanish population. The demographics population in American society is changing. So Hispanics. Spanish will be the majority population America within a few decades. Let's say 20 years around like. In 20 years from now, year 2020, the Spanish people is likely to be the majority population in America. So now they have this memory that in the old times, their Spanish ancestors, they used to own this territory in America. They used to own like Oregon, California, and Florida. So the territorial problem. So like Spanish descendants nowadays, they might say, oh, our ancestor used to own this territory, Oregon, California, Texas, Florida. No, don't we have some kind of priority? Don't we have some kind of privilege over this area? They might ask this Spanish Hispanic population in American society. They might ask this kind of question to their own society nowadays because it's getting bigger and bigger. But we were talking about the situation in the past, so we'll keep talking about the situation of the past a little while. So, but back to the 1848. 1848, Europeans had gone. Mississippi Basin was secure from land attack, so Mississippi Basin area was protected by American government, and the Pacific was reached. They have a control of Pacific area. It was obvious the remaining Indian nation would be subdued. So they had some native Indian territory in America, but they knew that it will be controlled. So there was no threat to USA in 1848. So it was time to make some money and then venture out across the seas to secure the approaches to the three coastlines of the superpower to be. So now they want to make some money and they want to go out, venture out. They want to go out. American government were paying attention to its inside, its domestic situation, unifying and establishing the area in the domestic side. But now they are done. They are done with this domestic business. So they want to go out the seas and to secure the approach's three coastlines. They have Pacific, Atlantic, and Gulf of Mexico. These three coastlines need to protect from foreign invasion. So now they were more caring about the outside of this country. So in the meanwhile, the California Gold Rush 1848 to 9 helped, but immigrants were heading west anyway. So these citizens and American government were moving toward west, and News broke out. 1848. The gold was discovered in California. So more people rushed. More and more people rushed to the West Coast, California area to find gold. After all, there was a continental empire to build, and as it developed, more immigrants followed. So they had to build this empire, huge country. They had to build this huge country. So as they tried to develop and build more nations, more people followed their trend toward the westward. So the Homestead Act of 1862 awarded 160 acres of federally owned land. The Homestead Act of 1862 awarded 160 acres of federally owned land to anyone, farmed it for 5 years, paid a small fee. So there was this policy, Homestead Act. It gave people 160 acres of federal land. If a person worked in the land for 5 years and pay a small fee, the land belonged to these people. So if you are a poor man from Germany, Scandinavia, or Italy, why go to Latin America and be a serf when you could go to USA and be a free landowning man? So serf means farmer or slave. So European immigrants from Germany, Scandinavia, Italy, they had a choice. They could go to Latin America or USA. If you go to Latin, you likely to become a slave or become a farmer. But go to USA, you work for 5 years and pay a little fee, and you can become a free landowning man. So I guess obviously people prefer going to North America. Now in 1867, Alaska was bought from Russia. So US government make another contract with Russia about Alaska. They bought it. And at the time, it was known as Seward Folly, after Secretary of State William Seward agreed to deal. People didn't like it. The citizens of America didn't like the deal between buying the Alaska, so they called it Seward Folly. Secretary of State William Seward is the one made a contract with Russia, so they people call it Seward mistake. Okay, Seward mistake or error, because people believe that the Alaska was nothing but the snow. So William Seward paid 7.2 million or 2 cents an acre. So he paid almost nothing buying the Alaska. Still, people didn't like it. However, the press accused him of purchasing snow. So newspapers and news media blamed William Seward by buying snow, but people changed with the discovery of major gold deposit in 1896. Gold was discovered in Alaska in 1896. Not only the gold, decade later, huge reserves of oil also found. So oil also discovered from Alaska, so people's mind changed. Okay, so this was the end of this exam unit for the midterm exam. So I hope that you guys have a good score with your exam. And again, thank you for watching this video. Okay, so thank you guys. See you. Bye bye.